Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. Today I'm talking about a subject that may not necessarily be top of mind until you need it, and that is resilience. My client, Marie-Helene Pelletier, gets hired by corporations and associations to speak to leaders and professionals and help them shore up their resilience and have that conversation about workplace mental health. MH, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here finally.
Hi, Jane. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I mean, any conversation with you is a pleasure, and really excited about today.
Well, tell everybody about your business model. How long have you been in speaking and what all do you have on the go? Because you have a pretty busy life.
Yeah, don't we all? But for me personally, I'm a registered psychologist, both in Quebec, where I'm from, and in British Columbia, where I live. I also have an MBA, and I've worked in workplace mental health for all my career. My roles were in senior leadership in private and public sectors, in governance, and all kinds of areas. And now, in many of these roles, had market-facing accountabilities. And I've been in my own business for the past coming up to 4 years in November. And in this business, I mostly do the largest, I have three segments, but the largest and fastest growing one is speaking. And it is thanks in part to you, Jane. Yay. Um, Second segment is advisory and coaching to individuals and organizations. And I also keep still a small psychology practice.
Okay, so lots going on in your world. Now, the word resilience has been bantered about a lot. Some people, I think, are even tired of talking about resilience. Uh, let's talk about what everybody's been through in the last 2 years and why is workplace mental health? I know we're speakers, we're solopreneurs, a lot of us, but why is it so important?
Yeah. Well, I think to your first point in terms of resilience, sometimes people get almost a bit tired of it now. And I'll tell you, I think part of what happens is that often we've said resilience as in bouncing back, right? You go through something and you're resilient, you bounce back out of it.
Right.
But now it almost feels superficial to equate resilience with bouncing back. We're in a pandemic. And it has been well over a year and a half. No, we're not like just jumping and, oh, well, we're bouncing back. No, we're not, right? So yeah, it doesn't mean we need to throw the resilience baby with the water, right? We still need to keep that concept, which basically is that the concept that refers to making sure we're managing the supply we have of energy and health and all that
Yeah.
versus the demands we're facing. And one of the key things, I mean, all this management of the supply and demand was true pre-pandemic. And sometimes we were better than other times, right? But the
Right.
reality is that pandemic basically just brought a whole additional chronic layer of demands, more for some people than others at different times than others for all of us, but it's there. And so resilience still important, but maybe not in that bouncing back type of way that
Hmm.
sometimes just feels too superficial.
Well, I was trying to remember. I remember feeling really overwhelmed back in the summertime. My mom, who's 91, lots of you know Sybil. She has now moved from a condo into a retirement community. And when I first started to recognize, we spent a month together, I think it was in June, up at the cottage. And by spending so much time with her, I recognized that dementia was setting in. And I think I was in some grief over that.
Mm.
And I think I felt beyond in terms of overwhelm because I was already depleted. Like I had been chipping away at my resilience all along and there was nothing left in the tank. My supply and demand got completely out of whack.
Yeah, yeah. No, that sounds like an example of a situation that, for whatever reason, in each of our individual contexts, people will go through. And now, knowing you, do you want to share what you did that helped you
I
progress out of it?
I believe it was kind of like a back to earth situation that actually literally brought me back. It was get out into nature and do the things that you love to do. I had a picture of myself on my jet ski. I know that sounds kind of goofy, and certainly
No.
I'm lucky to be able to do things like that. But going out in the morning on the paddle board or just booting around on the jet ski and getting like out there on the water with it splashing in my face somehow like just brought me back to that zen place, and also realizing that telling myself I was overwhelmed was not helpful. I had to figure out a new set of language to give myself for that next chapter, and we're just on the tail end of that whole piece now. This as we record this, we're almost into November, and so from June to November there was a massive, there was a lot going on. And I know a lot of people can relate to that because we all have elderly parents or we have kids that are having issues or whatever it might be. And that's what empties our tank, isn't it?
Yes, and what's fantastic, there's many fantastic aspects of what you talked about, but it's almost like you're touching on many key things, right? One, recognizing that you're feeling this way, and then taking action, and taking the types of actions we know from research and even personal experience
Yeah.
will contribute. But also there's this notion of time. It did not happen overnight. It's not like you went out once on a jet ski and it was over, right?
Right.
And we do need, especially as things are so busy, sometimes we need to remind ourselves to put that high on the list. And for you, yeah, having a picture of it may have been part of the reminder. And you referred to the fact that as speakers, we're often an N of one, right? And as an N of one, an organization of mostly one person who is the operations and the financial officer, and well, we also need to be the HR person, and the HR person's watching for the whole human side of things, which, even though we're in a business, the demands on the personal side all end up in that one person again. So we have to take into account these demands. Yeah.
So, what are you recommending for your clients in workplace settings and even solopreneurs like us that people do to help shore up their mindset?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a combination of, as we're wanting to improve our mindset, and and that's not just the mindset for the sake of mindset. Yay, have a good mindset. In this context, we're talking about it in the context of, in order to have the resilience to be adaptable, right? Change how we approach our sales, right? As speakers, a lot of what we do is sell our work, ourselves, to our team, to bureaus, to people around us. And so we'll need that energy and that resilience to adapt and respond to these changes in an effective way. And there are mostly two ways we're going to do this. There are the mind, how we manage our mind, the mindset, and there are also the behaviors, the actions, some of which you mentioned. And the four bases of the pyramid ones here
Okay.
are exercise.
Yes.
And we've heard about them in the pandemic. The problem here is not knowledge, it's implementation.
Yes.
Right? So, they're immensely backed up by decades of research. They're so simple that sometimes people discount them. Yeah, give me something else. No, basis of pyramid need to be done daily. So we've got exercise, which are three parts: cardio, strength training, and meditative type activity. You want
Yes.
nutrition, you want sleep, and you want time with people you enjoy spending time with. That's the relationship piece. So you want these things on the behavioral side. And there are other strategies, like even going to nature that you mentioned, that work very well for a lot of people. But these are the four. They're not all created equal. The kinds of things you could do in these four on the basis of the pyramid. So there's a whole behavioral side, and it will have an impact on our mindset and our resilience. Then there is a mindset side of things, and that's paying attention to how we think, paying attention to how we talk to ourselves, paying
Yes.
attention to what are our goals, which words are we using, how
Yes.
we're priming our mind, how we're preparing our mind for to align with the goals that we want.
Mel Robbins has her new book out. I don't, it's the High Five something. And, literally how you start off your day, how you start talking to yourself at the beginning of the day, is so important. And what are some of the daily rituals that you do to shore up your own kind of mindset and resilience?
Combination. Some of the key things that I think all of us need as speakers is to have either a business goal or a business plan, right? And so having clarity on what are these goals and how we're going to work towards them is one piece from a very practical perspective. But
Yes.
then, as you know, working with speakers, you could be here working towards these goals, planting seeds, and it's not like, they grow every day that you're planting these seeds, right? So sometimes as you're doing your outreaches to people, things like this, sometimes there's not going to be a win necessarily at the end of your day, an actual booking, for example. So managing your brain, managing how sometimes even I'll decide, okay, the win this week is not necessarily to have achieved anything in particular that comes back, but to have outreached this many times to people that I want to connect with, or making sure I've connected with this individual. So it's for me, I'll align what I do with the goals, and I'll keep an eye on how I'm thinking about it so that I stay motivated, so that I stay focused on the kinds of things I have control over. And then, this is entirely in my hands. If I do these outreaches, I can celebrate that I've done them and I'm happy about having done them.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, I want to put in a plug for the Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal, which
I
is
love that planner.
a way to start your day. So, let's walk through what kind of morning could be very, very helpful for someone. Let's say option A is to get up, look at your phone, and immediately kind of mentally dive into your day, right? Because a lot of people keep their phones right by their bedside table. You probably have something to say about that. So, or option B is maybe let's be a little more intentional about how we're easing into our day and what is our morning routine. What do you suggest for a morning routine?
Let me think. No, no. Well, number one, yeah, no. The from a sleep perspective, the phone, and you will not find research that says anything different than this. The phone needs to not enter the bedroom. So if it's your alarm, look at alternative options. You can buy very small travel alarms that will be smaller than your phone,
Yes.
actually. They're
Yes.
not expensive, they're smaller than your phone, and you can do that. And if you want to implement that action today and you're like, yes, but my phone is my alarm, then step one is put the phone still in your bedroom, but by the door, on the floor, by the door, not so you're not going to step on it. So it really serves only as an alarm, but nothing else.
Gotcha.
Because yeah, we want to protect your sleep, for, if nothing else, just for that reason. But then in terms of starting your day, starting it in your own terms better. Often also, a lot of busy professionals and leaders, once the day starts, it's as if you're taken by a wave. And next time you see yourself, it's going to be at the end of your day.
Yes.
So, right? So instead, and if you're going to want to implement some of those basis of the pyramid actions, for a lot of people, morning person or not, it often means morning is your best time to do them, because that time belongs to you until you open your emails or start looking on social and these kinds of things. So no, ideally phone's not coming in the bedroom. Ideally, when you come out of the bedroom, you're doing things for you. You're looking at your plans on how you're going to make sure you take care of yourself as well that day. And when you're ready, you start your day.
I love it. And yoga, by the way, was one of the things that really brought me back to out of my own overwhelm. So let me just go over the four again. We've got exercise, nutrition, sleep, and relationships. Those
Yes,
are kind of the four keys. Um, and any maybe we could even put something meditative underneath the exercise
that's
portion,
right.
because that could really be very, very helpful. But then there's the mindset and the self-talk. Now, one of the things that I've started to do is I'm going to hold it up for the video. I have these little, I don't know if they're 3x5 index cards, and I write down all my goals on them. And I even have one called my fearless bitch goal. Excuse my listeners if that feels foreign, if that feels like a beyond word for you. You're talking about how I'm going to play big in my life and that I'm the best at what I do and that I've helped thousands of speakers add zeros to their income. Like, imagine starting your day with that stuff going into your brain rather than something else. You know, there could be, it's so powerful to really be able to be intentional about how you want to. That's the type of thing that I think Mel Robbins would high five herself in the mirror and say, you know, some really, really powerful things. And I know that this self-talk is really, why is it people are so mean to themselves when they talk to themselves?
Oh, that could be a long conversation, but because it depends on how you're mean to yourself, right? Sometimes we'll be mean as in making ourselves anxious. Sometimes we'll be mean as in making ourselves feel down, right? You could go in different directions. Sometimes you do both at the same time, right? And so it's just a normal human thing that our brain at times will generate thoughts that are not that helpful. And it's not the end of the world. It's actually very normal. It happens to all of us. You're either aware of it or you're not. And the more you're aware of it, the more you can do something about it. Right. And so you can do something very on a more conscious side of things. So realizing that you're telling yourself, this is never going to work. And you're like, well, seriously, is that really realistic to think this when I cannot predict the future? Some things in the past I thought were not possible became possible. So clearly, no, I cannot predict the future. Yes. So how about instead I just give this a chance, take things one step at a time and move forward. So there's the very conscious side of things. And then, but what you're also referring to as you have your cards with what's important is that they're meaningful for you. And one of the things we know from research is that you can actually, you know, possibly what you're doing there in part where you're basically priming your brain to work towards these goals by simply exposure to those, in this case, these are words. Now, you could also expose your brain with images, right? So back to the other example you gave with the jet ski, that could serve as priming through an image, but you could prime through words. We actually know from research, images can be slightly more effective than the words, but the words works as well.
And some people do dream boards, and I am pretty sure that there was a jet ski on my dream board a few years ago. And so that's very interesting that you say that prime through images and prime through words. Okay, love that. All right, so this past year has led to a lot of us really reviewing our values and our goals, how we like to work. All of it just feels like it kind of went all up into the air. Your work, in your work, you found this to influence how we adapt. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think it happened naturally for a lot of people to step back. I mean, there was a point where there was nothing else to do than step back. So yeah, some of us got eventually there. Yes. But I think it did serve as a moment of reflection for many people, both on the personal and the professional side. And that's very good for a lot of people. It led to better alignment with our values, what's important for us, where we want to take the next whatever part of our lives. But from even a business perspective, as speakers, that's very important because we're speakers over here hoping that someone will hire us to give speeches. And for the people hiring us to give speeches, their world has also changed, right? Their customers' world has changed as well. So as we're over here looking to convince them that we may be a great addition to their corporate conversation or whatever is going on here, requires us to be really clear on what's our essence. What is it that I really want to bring to this world, to this conversation? Right. Sometimes you remind us Jane, to be clear on our lane and bring this, right? So it's as if in some ways the pandemic has forced us perhaps to get even more pure in this essence of what are we bringing, and to also get really good at learning about what's going on here, what's going on for our clients, what's going on for the customers of our clients, such that when we have again these sales, business development conversations, we can really align well, right?
I love it. I love it. Being really clear on your sweet spot, making sure that you understand what your lane is. I think a lot of people even shifted the focus from how do I love to work? I think some people have decided that they're going to incorporate a lot more virtual into their business because that really really works for them. And I love now that we have so many options. I think from the road warrior standpoint, and you prior to COVID were an incredible road warrior. You came up in your business really, really fast, by the way, and a lot of people would be envious of the business that you created in the amount of time that you did. But that whole road warrior, you didn't have time, to be in year 10 where you're feeling a little bit burnout by the whole thing. So let's speak to the person who has now been through COVID, has reevaluated everything, and kind of is trying to gear up and get some, I don't know, inspiration going to go back out and start doing that again. I mean, maybe they're going to do it completely different this time around that won't put them back into that kind of road warrior burnout situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's I mean, likely this hypothetical person that you're describing,
Mm.
quite possibly what they've done is during the pandemic, they've gone through a few iterations. Okay, let's experiment with this way of outreaching. Let's experiment with this offering, this combination of offering, or this type of responding to what I'm hearing. And that I think is part of how we need to continue to be in experimenting mode, adapting, shifting, listening, possibly even more,
Yeah.
learning, and trying different things. And I think that you know how in the recent things change so fast, right? Not so long ago, we were talking about the new normal. Now we're talking about the next normal. I actually prefer the next normal than to the new normal
Yes.
because it does remind us in some ways that, yeah, there is this next normal, and there will probably be another next normal, and then another, and then another. So if instead of looking for, okay, let us reach the next plateau on which we're going to sit for as long as we can, probably not so much. Probably instead staying in this mode of, to some degree, constant reinvention, not as in throw everything out the window and start at zero, but there is a basis that for all of us probably stays, right? That's almost
Yeah.
like the core of our lane, what we could call our core business. And then there are, how are we approaching it? How are we talking about it? I've had conversations with clients directly and with bureaus where, okay, this is what they came back with. What do you think? And then we're brainstorming. And I say, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. In the end, what turns out to work is option 3 that I happen to throw there, thinking, yeah, I'm not sure where they're at, but this could work. And
Yeah.
turns out this is what works.
Brilliant.
So we have to keep experimenting and maybe stay in that experimenting mode, for which we need resilience and energy because it's demanding. If your energy is higher and you've nourished it, then you enter the, I'm going to call this the fun territory. Like literally, it's playful almost to look for these solutions, but we do need to have energy. Otherwise, there is nothing that feels like fun there, right?
Yeah. And I love the idea of really designing and developing things that get you jazzed. Okay, so if you're a 10-year road warrior, you've been there, you've done that, you got the t-shirt, but what can you develop? What are delivery ways or combination packages that you can develop that you would feel excited about? And so there was a debate the other day. I may be going down a bit of a rabbit hole here of do we do what we love, or do we do what the clients really, really need? And I think somewhere in the intersection is the perfect spot. Let's offer up what we would love and would be perfect for us, and then let's see what they need, and then see if we can't come to a place where we marry it together. Because sometimes this place of constant reinvention is going to bring us to a lot of brilliance that would never have come otherwise.
Agree. And it's a good question. It's a good question to bring to almost any conversation because, yeah, right. Ultimately, someone needs to buy it. So there needs to be, someone who sees that value. But do we just do what, say, in this case, the client says they want, or we listen to what they're saying, and then we think, then we bring, that's the essence that I'm talking about. That's when we bring our expertise, perspectives, knowledge, just like there's a reason we get paid what we get paid. There is like 3 decades or however decades there is over here, right? So let's bring this as we listen to, we could say, sure, I could do what you're asking. That is one option. From what I'm hearing you say, however, it looks like you're after this, this, and that. And to get to this, this, and that, in my experience and based on research or whatever your expertise is, there are these additional ways to consider.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And selling really transformation for clients. So I want this quote to come out front and center. The next normal is constant reinvention. That's what the next normal is. So that's our quote for the beginning of our emailer, Monica. She's going to pull that out. She's listening to this right now for what's going to be the quote. And I really love that. The next normal is constant reinvention. I know we didn't even use the P word, pivot. Everybody's like, don't say that word anymore. We're just so tired of it. But really, constant reinvention, I think, is probably where it's at. Any final tip that you might have for someone who's just felt like they've been through the ringer and they want to kind of building back their stores, their reservoirs of resilience, of supply?
Mm-hmm. I would say we all need to continue to approach the next phases with curiosity. We need to stay curious to look for in which additional ways, in which new ways can I nourish my resilience, whether it's through some of the behaviors we've talked about, whether it's through the mindsets, as some of which we've talked about today, the more conscious ones, the more priming ones. There also is the connecting with others, and there is the connecting with resources, because most likely some of the people who are listening they are either burnt out or close to it, right? So meaning very close to the bottom of their tank. So even as we're talking about these strategies, they're feeling there's not much in there. If that's the case, then that's usually the time to connect with a professional resource, like your physician or nurse practitioner, like a psychologist, so that you can have another head thinking with you about what actually is going on for you, so that we can target things in an even more personalized way.
Yeah.
Right? Because at some point there is an end, there is a bottom to that tank. It's not like, we can just will it to never be empty. There will be a point where it can be. And so that's what I would say there. But otherwise, anything higher than this, we stay curious and we take, just having knowledge is not going to do it.
Beautiful. Marie-Helene Pelletier, thank you so much, MH, for being with us on the show today. Now, if people want to get a hold of you, how should they do so? Can they connect on LinkedIn, go to your website? What would you like?
Yeah, the website or LinkedIn, both work. And website is drmhpelletier.com. You'll have it probably on your
We'll put it on the show notes.
Summary. And then LinkedIn is the same, drmhpelletier.com.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've absolutely loved talking to you about this really, really important topic of resilience. And for those of you listening in, I hope you'll let us know if something has struck a chord with you. And with that, we'll say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now.